humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for...
Hello and welcome, I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Yemen has said that 7 people have been killed in the country as a Saudi-led coalition attacked the UAE-backed separatists. More than 20 people have also been wounded in the alleged attack. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he's open to negotiating with the United States on combating drug trafficking. He strikes a more conciliatory tone towards Washington, even as he remains silent on reports of a recent CIA-led strike. The Israeli military says it intercepts a false target in Bahram after drone sirens sound, while Hezbollah sources deny involvement. The incident comes as pressure grows on Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah under a possible truce deal. As the humanitarian crisis worsens in Gaza, foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt have expressed deep alarm. The ministers have also highlighted that the severe weather has laid bare the fragility of existing humanitarian conditions. Investigators continue searching for victims after a Swiss ski resort bar fire that has killed around 40 people and injured more than 100. With doctors treating severe burn cases, officials say identification could take days or weeks as the cause remains unclear and forensic teams work at the scene. China says President Xi Jinping will host South Korean President Lee Jae-myung from Sunday, signaling a push to strengthen ties. It is their second meeting in 2 months, with Beijing emphasizing economic cooperation and tourism amid regional strains. Hong Kong's anti-graft agency arrests 21 people over suspected corruption linked to renovation projects at 2 housing estates. Authorities say the action follows a wider crackdown after a deadly high-rise fire and includes allegations of bribery and bid manipulation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has named Spy Chief Budanov as the new Chief of Staff. This comes after the dismissal of Andriy Yermak, the longtime Chief of Staff. Now for this hour, we start with Europe. Italy's foreign minister has paid tribute to victims of a deadly New Year's Eve fire in Switzerland. Antonio Tajani has visited the ski resort of Crans-Montana, where a bar blaze has killed more than 40 people and injured over 100. Tajani has met Swiss officials in the canton of Valais before laying flowers at a memorial at the site. He said 13 Italians were injured and 6 remain missing. Swiss police continue to investigate the cause of the fire, stressing it is not being treated as an attack. Tajani has said finding the truth is essential, including determining the responsibility for managing the venue. Let's listen into what Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani has shared.
Sono qua tanto per essere vicino alle famiglie degli italiani che sono coinvolte in questa immane tragedia che ha colpito la Svizzera, ma ha colpito anche la comunità italiana. Adesso vediamo cosa si può fare per aiutare I feriti, vedere I dispersi.
4 more injured Italians are being brought home after a deadly fire in Switzerland. Italian officials say 4 patients who were hurt in the Crans-Montana blaze will be transferred to Milan's Niguarda Hospital. Let's listen into what Lombardy's welfare chief Guido Bertolaso has shared.
Dovremmo riuscire a far trasferire qui al nostro ospedale 4 dei giovani che sono ancora feriti e che sono ricoverati negli ospedali svizzeri. Il primo dovrebbe essere in arrivo in questa mattina, è un ragazzo di 15 anni che arriva dall'ospedale di Berna. L'elicottero è già praticamente a Berna, abbiamo problemi di meteo perché c'è nebbia e quindi l'attraversamento delle Alpi è un po' problematico, per cui quando le condizioni meteo lo permetteranno sicuramente lui arriverà qui, spero entro la mattinata.
Now for this discussion, we welcome former Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee. She's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, how could questions about responsibility for venue management and also a lot of things that are boiling up right now affect the relations between Italian and Swiss authorities as the investigations into the fire continues?
Well, thank you, Asu. Let me begin by saying that I have actually lived for 6 years in Geneva, working for the UN, and I have been to several of these ski resorts, etc. And let me assure you that since everything in Switzerland, including the ski resorts, which are very picturesque, is made of highly inflammable wood, the Swiss have an excellent fire safety record. This fire, in which it was tragic that so many young people died celebrating a new year, more than 40 you were saying, is very, very difficult for anyone who has lived in Switzerland to accept and to understand, because of the very careful way in which they manage these issues, knowing very well that their buildings, unlike those that we have, for instance, in India, are made completely of wood, beautifully done. In this particular case, I'm told that it happened because there was a bartender who lifted a female bartender on his shoulders. She had a champagne bottle and something lit, a spark, etc. And this touched the wooden roof, and the fire immediately broke out. That again, to me, would appear to give me the impression that the bartender could not have been Swiss, the lady bartender could not have been Swiss. It must have been foreigners who don't know how inflammable and how dangerous these pure wooden resorts are. And yet, for decades, the Swiss have managed them beautifully. You even have fireplaces inside which are fully operational because of their safety measures. So I'm glad that a full investigation is being done. But what is very difficult for me to understand is how come this was in the basement, how come the exit was only one exit, etc. Because according to the European Union regulations, which the Swiss follow, normally if you have to have a resort in the basement, you have to have at least 2 to 3 exits. These are explained to those who enter, and normally actually it is the toilets that are in the basement, which I realized myself, and the resorts are always above ground, not in the basement. In this particular case, it was in the basement. There was only one exit which got crowded very fast, and all the windows upstairs were sealed and had to be broken open with stools or with sheer physical strength, etc. That again is something which I can't understand. There were many things, therefore, which were wrong in this particular ski resort, and I think a thorough investigation is required to ensure that such a tragedy does not happen again. I heard you or someone say that 13 Italians have been injured. That is normal, because at this time of the year, the Italians go to ski resorts in the Swiss Alps, and they are extremely good skiers, the Italians. So I'm not surprised. And again, the Italians are also very well aware of the safety regulations. So I would like to really know the identity of the bartender and the lady bartender, if they have escaped the fire, whether they are from Europe or they are from outside Europe, or they are new and they did not know how inflammable the roof of a completely wooden ski resort can be, because a normal Swiss citizen would be aware and would be careful and would never bring in sparklers inside a closed room with one narrow exit leading to the ground floor, because it was in the basement. For instance, in India, it's not permitted at all, and our buildings are not made of wood. So And if, the Swiss are very evolved people, then they're very careful and they are very disciplined. So I'm really, really surprised at how such a terrible tragedy could have happened. And my hearts go out to the families of the victims, young people who had gone to celebrate the new year and met a terrible fate. Asuma.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, for joining us today and sharing that insight on this news. We have a breaking news. A strong earthquake has shaken Mexico City. Authorities say the quake measured 6.5 magnitude and was felt across the capital. The tremor briefly disrupted daily life and forced President Claudia Sheinbaum to suspend her regular morning press conference. There were no immediate reports of major damage or casualties as officials continued to assess the situation. Now we move on to our next news. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has signaled a softer tone towards the United States, offering talks with President Donald Trump on drug trafficking and opening the door to U.S. investment in Venezuela's oil sector. In an interview filmed on New Year's Eve and broadcast on state television, Maduro has described Venezuela as a brother country to the U.S. and said Washington should engage in serious dialogue. Let's listen in.
Nosotros hemos tenido, Ramón, una sola conversación. Él me llamó el viernes 21 de noviembre desde la Casa Blanca estaba. Y yo estaba en el Palacio de Miraflores. Conversamos 10 minutos. Y fue una conversación, como yo he dicho, respetuosa, muy respetuosa,
¿Qué le dijo
cordial.
¿Qué le dijo el presidente Trump?
Lo primero que me dijo, Mr. President Maduro.
Excelente.
Y yo le dije, Mr. President Donald Trump. Y creo que fue hasta agradable esa conversación. Pero de ahí las evoluciones post-conversación no han sido agradables. Esperemos. Y al pueblo de Estados Unidos, yo le digo lo que le he venido diciendo. Aquí en Venezuela tiene un pueblo hermano. Al pueblo de Estados Unidos, inclusive le digo, aquí tienen a un gobierno amigo. Empezar a conversar en serio, con datos en la mano. Y el gobierno de Estados Unidos lo sabe, porque se lo hemos dicho a muchos de sus voceros, que si quieren conversar seriamente de un acuerdo de combate contra el narcotráfico, estamos listos. Que si quieren petróleo de Venezuela, está lista Venezuela para inversión estadounidense como con Chevron.
The remarks mark a shift from Maduro's recent rhetoric, coming after heightened U.S. military activity in the Caribbean and repeated accusations from Washington that his government runs a narco state, claims Maduro strongly denies. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Raymond Vickery. He's an international affairs expert and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Vickery, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, why this sudden shift or change in Maduro's attitude and tone? What could be this motive or this strategy behind this? Is this a calculated move by him? What do you think?
Well, thanks very much for having me, and a Happy New Year once again.
Happy New Year.
I appreciate that. In order to wage peace, you have to wage it like war. You have to have a strategy, you have to have partners, and you have to have principles upon which you are trying to wage that peace. Unfortunately, the President Donald Trump administration has none of these in regard to international affairs, and its view is a throwback to the old 19th century view that the United States was entitled to run things in the Western Hemisphere. You let other great powers, Russia or China, run things in their areas. That is not a way forward. Maduro has been the subject, of course, of unilateral action by the Trump administration and blowing up boats and blowing up a wharf, a dock. and making accusations without any proof. Maduro, for his part, of course, is not a good guy. He has been involved with narcotics smuggling. He has suppressed human rights in Venezuela. But the way forward here is now for the Trump administration to take advantage of the holding out of the possibility of a peaceful resolution. As you know, the Nobel Peace Prize winner for 2025, Ms. Machado, was honored for her opposition to Maduro, and she has in mind a peaceful way forward. So the thing which must be done at this point is to take advantage of this opening to come up with a strategy involving partners in the region, rather than simply trying to impose an imperial will of the United States against the rest of Latin America. So I predict that these overtures of Maduro will not have a positive impact, because President Trump's mindset is one of my way or the highway, might makes right, a transactional approach rather than a comprehensive cooperative approach, which can bring about peaceful transition in Venezuela and show the way forward to building peace and prosperity throughout the Western Hemisphere.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Vickery, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus to Middle East, Yemen's UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council has declared that they are fighting an existential and decisive war against Saudi-backed forces following a massive military escalation in southern Yemen. The conflict has reached a boiling point after the STC launched a surprise offensive in December last year, seizing control of the resource-rich Hadramaut and Mahrab provinces, which Saudi Arabia considers vital to its own national security. This internal war has severely strained the alliance between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who are nominally allies against the Houthi rebels but are now back opposing factions in the south. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Raymond Vickery. Thank you very much, Mr. Vickery, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what is this situation with Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and UAE, and how will this declaration of existential war indicate about this rift, and what can come next?
Well, thanks for allowing me to comment on this. You see in this conflict really a proxy war, a proxy confrontation between the United Arab Republic and Saudi Arabia. You have Mohammed bin Salman on the Saudi Arabian side, and Mohammed bin Zayed on the UAE side. Unfortunately, this is a manifestation of what has come down through the Trump administration of national aggrandizement as being the measure of greatness. Instead of some sort of cooperative approach, which is enshrined in the United Nations Charter and other international documents, you have a spreading across the world of the America First approach. It's Saudi Arabia first for Mohammed bin Salman. It's UAE first for Zayed. And so what you have is a playing out of the traditional role of states in terms of trying to aggrandize their own national influence. And the confrontation which goes on in Yemen is repeated in Sudan, and it makes for turmoil throughout the world. So what needs to happen here is for powers which have international influence, particularly the democratic powers, India, Western Europe, Japan, United States, to adopt and defend principles of non-interference and peaceful cooperation. Unfortunately, the UAE and Saudi Arabia confrontation in a proxy war in Yemen is just the latest manifestation of this old-fashioned way of looking at national power. Unfortunately, it does not lead to peace and prosperity. What it leads to is more confrontation, more war, the kind of situation which we experienced in the first half of the 20th century, which led to international disaster. So, at this point, what needs to happen is for great democracies around the world, as I've indicated, to join together to try to bring about a cooperative approach which can build lasting peace and prosperity with respect for individual liberties. But the signs are not good at this point. All the signs are more and more of the old way of thinking about national power.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Vickery for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Hollywood actor and humanitarian Angelina Jolie has visited Egypt's Rafah border crossing with Gaza, where she has met members of the Egyptian Red Crescent and truck drivers delivering humanitarian aid to Gaza. Jolie, a former special envoy for the United Nations Refugee Agency, has traveled to the Egyptian side of the crossing to assess the condition of injured Palestinians and also who have been evacuated from Gaza, and to observe the flow of aid into the besieged territory. During this visit, she was seen listening to aid workers and drivers in transporting relief supplies as humanitarian agencies warn of worsening conditions inside Gaza amid shortages of food, medicine, and shelter. The Rafah crossing remains a critical lifeline for humanitarian assistance entering Gaza as international pressure mounts to ensure sustained and unrestricted aid access for civilians affected by the conflict. Now we move on to our next news. India has approved electronic component manufacturing projects worth $4.6 billion under the government's incentive scheme. Projects from global and domestic majors including Samsung, Tata Electronics, and Foxconn have been declared to receive the subsidies. Meanwhile, the investments spread across 8 Indian states are expected to generate electronic parts worth over $28 billion and create around 34,000 jobs. Manufacturing will include mobile phone enclosures, camera sub-assemblies, and key electronic components. However, the move is a part of India's push to strengthen local supply chains, cut import dependence, and scale up electronics production. India's electronics output stood at $125 billion last year, with a target of $500 billion by fiscal 2031. That's all we have time for. Keep watching